Back during the 1.5 livestream, Keith Silverstein, the voice actor for Zhongli, mentioned that the new broadsword, Song of Broken Pines, had some lore tied to it, just like the rest of the weapons from the Millennial Movement series that is slowly coming out. And now that it's been officially released, because we do not support leaks here, we can finally see what's going on with the sword. Unlike Eulogy of the End, which focused on the fight against Durin and the deaths of Rostam, the Claymore's lore is a lot more vague, looking at the slow rise of the resistance before Vanessa arrived. See, during both the reign of Dekrabian and the aristocracy, music was often stifled for the sake of stopping the rebellious spirit from growing in the people. Obviously, in both cases, their plan failed. Venti showed up, and people started playing music, and then people started fighting back. That's pretty much the history of Mondstadt in a nutshell. The Claymore focused specifically on the friction that appears in the church before the aristocracy fell. While the clergy members were put in the ranks with the lords, the saints were pushed aside, treated as poorly as the quote-unquote plebeians. This divide in the church allowed the saints to become closer with the people of Mondstadt. They would spread the original holy manuscripts, bless any people who needed it, and most importantly, pen songs and poems that encouraged the rebellious spirit that the people of Mondstadt needed. When the rebellion did start, a nameless shepherd from the church encouraged people to join the fight. It's not clear who this person is. The manga that explores Vanessa's story ends before the rebellion truly started, but we do know that their actions led to their martyred blood being spilled. And this story matches up with the weapon's name. Broken Pines doesn't really make a lot of sense. This story doesn't exactly revolve around evergreens, but if I've learned anything from countless classes on poetics, and I still have nightmares about to this day, it's that sometimes you have to go with what sounds nice rather than what's grammatically correct. Rather than pines referring to the noun, it seems to be a verb. While most people use pining in the romantic sense, it can also mean a loss of vigor, health, or flesh through grief. With what little we know about Mondstadt during the time it was ruled by the aristocracy, we can certainly say that people were losing vigor and health, so when that pining that was over the city broke, it would mean that they were rejuvenated. And that matches up with the rebellion that occurred. So with that little review of what the sword means out of the way, what does it all mean? Well, it doesn't reveal a lot about the history of Mondstadt, other than the fact that the church probably played a bigger part in the Second Revolution. That would mean that the importance of the church is less because of how religious the people of the city are, and more because of the power and trust that they gained during that time. While the Knights of Favonius was made to fill the power vacuum, the church also stepped in to guide people, and this effect is still seen to this day. Bennett is just one of the many people who go to the church for medical care, after all. It's also interesting to note that the story associated with the Song of Broken Pines has nothing to do with the one of the Eulogy of the End. In fact, the two things that the two stories have in common are that, one, they both focus on the battle to secure Mondstadt's freedom and told that it took on some of the people's lives, and two, they both contain songs that have historical meaning to the city. Now, this makes sense, considering the name of the weapons. If there wasn't some form of poem or song attached to them, it would just feel wrong. Plus, it's Mondstadt, the city full of bards. If there wasn't some sort of musical history element, it wouldn't make sense. So we can sort of guess that as the rest of the series releases, we're gonna get a lot more about the history of Mondstadt. It's also possible that there's going to be a lot more church involvement soon. After all, the Song of Broken Pines isn't the only thing connected to the church of late. Rosario was recently released, and the We Will Be Reunited quest has the statue stolen from the church in the center of it all. With all this slowly adding up, it feels like the story is purposely trying to keep us pointed towards Mondstadt and the church. We just don't know why yet. It could be something as simple as the church helps us to get to Azuma, or something as complicated as the church being the key to taking down our twin. But I don't feel like it'll be either of those things. See, at the end of Zhongli's first character quest, we ask why he's telling us the true history of Leilu, and he states that it's because we can carry the history and take it to another world. And, well, this isn't as pointed. In a sense, it's the same thing. Remember the second thing that both weapons had in common? The song? In the Song of Broken Pine lore, it mentions that the latter half of the song had been forgotten for a time, bringing back up the idea of memory. Even the first thing I listed as their common qualities was a story of Mondstadt being told. In a sense, these weapons carry the true memory of Mondstadt, just like the church does. Remember how Barbara mentioned a church record in the We Will Be Reunited quest? By taking these weapons, we can also carry the history of Mondstadt. It's also important to note that with so many references to it, it seems like memory and truth are going to be a key theme in the game, especially considering that Kanya, the starting point of all the events in the game, was destroyed 500 years ago. The true history of what happened during the Great Collapse will obviously be very important to the overall plot, and it makes sense that the true history of the other cities are going to end up being pulled into that as well. After all, history isn't just done in a vacuum. The entire world affects history. Of course, I could just be reading into this way too much again. It could have been just that they put a lot of work into constructing the history of Tibet and realized that it wouldn't make it into the final game, so they desperately trying to show it off somehow. And I can understand that. It's so detailed that it'd be a shame for all the lore to just fade away into obscurity and never be used, never remembered. Lost to time, unless we, the traveler, take the story with us into the different world, our world.